Alright, here's the deal. My name's Alex, and I'm 34. I've been in a relationship with Jessica, my girlfriend, for a little over 2 years. When I met Jessica, I never expected the kind of whirlwind relationship we'd have. We met at a mutual friend's birthday party, and at first, it felt like something out of a movie. I was instantly drawn to her, the way she carried herself, how easy it was to talk to her, and that wild, carefree energy she had. She was a drinker, which was fine by me. I'm not much of a drinker myself, having had my share of bad experiences in my 20s, but that's not what drew me to her. I've always been a fan of weed, and I still smoke it regularly. Not every day, though. I like to keep it to once every other week or so. It's a way for me to unwind, reconnect with myself, and just take a break from the hectic pace of life. After all those years of smoking back in my teens, I've developed a pretty high tolerance. I'm not one to get blasted off a single joint. Jessica, on the other hand, well, she's more into her drinks. Every weekend, without fail, she'd grab a bottle of wine or some whiskey, and we'd have a nice time. I didn't mind. It wasn't a problem. We had our differences, sure, but that's what made us who we were. Not long ago, we went to my cousin's wedding. Weddings are always a bit strange for me, to be honest. The ceremony itself is nice, but the reception? That's where the real drama happens. I've never been one to get too drunk or too wild, but Jessica was determined to make it a night of celebration. She talked me into ditching my usual joint and having a few drinks instead. So I did. And well, let's just say I drank more than I ever expected to. I ended up way drunker than I'd ever been. The whole night felt like a blur. Too much laughter, too many drinks, too little sleep. And that's when things took a turn. I was stumbling around trying to find Jessica when I walked into a room and found her. There she was, sitting with my cousin Sean. I hadn't even seen Sean much at the wedding. I mean, we're cousins, sure, but we've never really been close. Sean's the kind of guy who thinks I'm weird because I'm always stoned. He's a cocky, spoiled jerk who always acts like he's better than everyone else. And there he was, sitting on the couch, passing around a line of coke with Jessica. At that moment, it hit me like a freight train. I froze. The room felt like it was spinning, and my heart started pounding. My head was foggy from the booze, but the sight of them together cut through everything like a blade. I could feel the bow rising in my throat. My girlfriend, my Jessica, was doing coke with my cousin. I couldn't believe it. I didn't know what to say. My heart shattered into a million pieces right there. I confronted her, and you'd think the look on my face would have told her everything. I didn't need to say anything. But she just brushed it off. "I'm just having a good time, Alex," she said, as if it were no big deal. She didn't even seem guilty. That was the part that killed me. I wasn't even sure how to respond. My thoughts were all over the place, and before I knew it, we were fighting. And somehow, in the chaos of emotions, we ended up back in bed together. I don't know what it was. Maybe it was the alcohol, maybe it was the desperation to make things right, but we ended up sleeping together. But the next morning, when I woke up, she was gone. I couldn't believe it. I tried not to jump to conclusions. Maybe she just needed space. Maybe I was overthinking things. But deep down, I knew something wasn't right. I got dressed and went downstairs to try to find her, but that's when I overheard a conversation between some of Sean's friends. They were laughing, and one of them said, "Sean's hooking up with his cousin's girlfriend." That was it. I couldn't hold back anymore. I stormed over to one of them and demanded to know which room they were in. I didn't even know what I was going to do when I got there, but I needed answers. We walked down the hall, and I could hear the laughter through the door before we even reached it. My hands were shaking, my pulse was racing, but I knew I had to do something. I told Sean's buddy to knock on the door and tell him to come out. The door opened, and there was Sean, smiling smugly like nothing was wrong. And behind him, sitting there, was Jessica. She looked completely caught off guard, like a deer in headlights. She asked, "What's going on?" And immediately, I could tell she was freaking out. But the worst part, Sean didn't say a word. He just stood there, like it was all normal. Jessica tried to explain, but it didn't matter. I didn't need to hear anything else. I didn't say a word. I just walked out. It felt like I was walking through a fog. Betrayal, confusion, anger, it was all mixing together. What was I supposed to do now? Was this the end? Was this the final straw? My thoughts were all over the place. I went back to the reception, trying to figure out how to process everything. I just needed space. Over the next few days, I stewed in my anger and confusion. I couldn't stop thinking about what had happened. Eventually, I managed to sit down with Jessica and ask her to explain. I needed to understand why she hadn't just told me about her cocaine use. I wasn't judging her. I would have helped her, no questions asked. But the truth she gave me, it hit me like a punch to the gut. She told me that she would have cheated on me no matter what. She admitted it. She said our sex life was boring, like it was as dull as it gets. She even said she'd been faking it the whole time, just so I wouldn't get hurt. She didn't feel the need to hide it anymore, she said. She'd been waiting for the right moment to let me know that she was never truly happy. And just when I thought it couldn't get worse, she joined in with Sean and my cousins, calling me a cuckold, and predicting that my next girlfriend would cheat on me too. The worst part? I had never even seen it coming. The whole time we were together, I thought we were building something. I thought we were happy. But now, it was clear, I was just a placeholder. A safety net for her. I couldn't even describe the pain I was feeling. I wanted to scream, to break something, but instead I just sat there, numb. I spent the next few days in a haze. The only person I could really talk to was my therapist. I wasn't even sure what I wanted from him. I just needed someone to listen, someone who wouldn't judge me for everything that was happening. My therapist was understanding, as always. He kept me grounded, reminding me that the pain would eventually subside. He said I needed to focus on myself. And that's when I made a decision. I was going to turn my life around. I gave up smoking weed for the time being. It felt like it was time for a change. I didn't need to numb myself anymore. I started hitting the gym. Every day. It didn't matter if I didn't feel like it. I knew I had to keep moving. Every workout was a way for me to get my anger and frustration out, to channel all that pain into something productive. I wasn't seeing big physical changes right away, but that didn't matter. What mattered was that I was doing something. I was making progress, even if it didn't feel like it. I began to notice something though. Women at the gym started noticing me. Maybe it was the extra effort I was putting in, or maybe it was just that I was in better shape. But either way, it was nice to feel that boost of confidence again. For the first time in a while, I felt like I had something to offer, something to look forward to. One day, I ran into Max, my cousin's son. He's one of the younger kids in the family, but he's always been a good guy. He told me that after everything went down at the wedding, the kids in the family had started giving their parents a hard time. They were calling them out on their behavior, which made me feel a little better. Even though I felt like the odd one out in the family, it was nice to know that I had their support. It wasn't much, but it was something. And honestly, it felt like a small victory. But it wasn't over yet. Things were still raw, still messy. One afternoon, I ran into Sean at a local store. I don't know what it was. Maybe it was all the anger I had pent up, or maybe it was just seeing him standing there like nothing was wrong. But when I saw him, something inside me snapped. He was acting like the same smug jerk he always had been, like he hadn't done anything wrong. And in that moment, all the hurt, all the betrayal, it all came rushing back. I'm not proud of what happened next. I went after him. It was like I couldn't control myself. Punches, rage, adrenaline, it was all a blur. Before I knew it, I had broken his nose and knocked out one of his teeth. His friends were standing there, doing nothing to stop it. They didn't even care. It was like they were just watching a show. When it was over, they didn't rush to help him. They just stood there, shaking their heads like they didn't want any part of it. And now I'm worried. I've got a lot to lose. Aggravated assault and grievous bodily harm aren't something to mess around with. I'm terrified of what might happen, what kind of trouble I might get into. But so far, nothing's happened. No cops have come knocking, no one said anything. But the fear still lingers. I've kept a low profile, trying to process everything that happened. Therapy's been helping, but I know I've still got a long way to go. I'm not proud of what I did to Sean, but it's done. I can't change it. All I can do now is work on myself, make sure I don't let that kind of anger control me again. After everything with Jessica and Sean, I knew I had to focus on myself. I threw myself into therapy, hit the gym harder than ever, and started putting the pieces of my life back together. That's when I met Emily. We started talking during one of my workouts, and it didn't take long for me to realize we had a lot in common. We started dating, and it felt like things were finally starting to get better. With Emily, I felt a sense of peace that I hadn't felt in a long time. We opened up about our pasts, shared stories of heartbreak and healing, and it brought us closer. Things felt real, and I felt like I could trust her. It was a breath of fresh air. And then, something incredible happened. Emily asked me if I wanted to move in with her. It's a big step, and I took my time thinking about it. But after everything I'd been through, it felt like the right move. I said yes. I'm ready for this next chapter. Living with Emily feels like a new beginning. It's a chance to build something real, something healthy, something lasting. And honestly, I couldn't be more excited. It's been a long journey, and I've come a long way since everything happened with Jessica and Sean. I'm grateful for the chance to start fresh. I'm learning how to trust again, how to love again. And maybe, just maybe, this time it'll be different.